on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. The election trap was not only set, and people have been talking about it, and I think a lot of us have been saying the same thing, like, what is this trap? Why does everyone seem like they should be confident, but it doesn't look like it? There is a lot of things that have been put in place. The evidence is starting to show itself. We've got a couple pieces of fact that kind of indicate that this is happening, and I've got the actual documentation, government documents, that will paint a picture that will make you feel better about this entire election. I almost promise you. One thing I want to say is if you guys do like my channel, support my channel, please subscribe. Please click the thumbs up. Getting past this YouTube algorithm is a challenging one, and this quite possibly could be one of the best videos I think I've done up to date. Hopefully, we'll be doing better ones soon. Now, to start to paint the picture, first off, there's a lot of treasonous people that are going to see their day in courts. We may never see it. We may never see it, but they may end up down in Guantanamo or who knows where. And I, again, will definitely demonstrate this for you. So starting off, one thing that kind of want to paint the picture, there's a lot of recount stuff. There's all this information that's going on, and that's a legal fight that's going to continue to happen. Part of me thinks it's maybe a backup plan. Maybe it's just sort of a smokescreen. Maybe it's kind of meant to at least make the public go, man, he's at least fighting this. Cool, go Trump. Because a lot of us, I think, were pretty downtrodden after the election, and we felt like, my God, I can't believe this was taken from us. And I think a lot of us felt that way. Now, of course, we'd see where the votes all lie, but that's kind of beside the point, and that's really what this article's speaking to and why I've got it up. The Georgia recount is not really as open and fair as they were promising, so doing the recount again, which they've started, under the same hidden agenda is really not going to be forthcoming of any information. There's a couple different kinds of ballot legitimacy issues that can come into play. The first type of fraud's not really going to be covered because they're not double checking those things. The second type might kind of be, again, almost irrelevant at this point. But, again, there's lots of news suggesting all sorts of voter legality issues coming to play. Another thing that sort of indicates that we're heading in the right direction, I truly think, is ABC's Dan Abrams goes on air and says he worries that Trump could still steal this election. They're nervous because I think this information is hitting the mainstream right now. I think this information is hitting them, and it is freaking them out. Why? Because there's a strong chance that they have knowingly been treasonous to this country. And that might be a bit of a problem for them. Now, one of the big things that was oddly came out right before the election was a public broadcasting system, PBS. They did a deep dive on Georgia's use of Dominion voting system machines. It's about 2 minutes. This is very worth it, and it starts to paint an interesting picture, maybe some foreshadow into where I'm going to be going with this article because, again, we've got major stuff that's going to be coming here. I do not think you're going to be disappointed. Let's check this out.
Also taking a deep dive, election security white hat hacker Hari Hursty.
They have set up a complicated system which is centralized and doesn't seem to have any safeguards.
Georgia's vote tallying system is a complex assortment of laptops, iPads, magnetic cards, touchscreens, printers, and scanners. Lots of moving parts. In 2019, Georgia bought the devices from a Canadian company called Dominion Voting Systems. They replaced paperless machines like these, made by a now defunct company called Diebold Election Systems. A federal judge forced the state to scrap the discredited devices. Election security activist Marilyn Marks was part of the lawsuit that triggered the change. But for her, ballot marking devices, now used widely in 14 states, are not the ideal remedy.
We need paper records that are marked by the voter, with the voters on hand, where we know that was recorded the way that the voter wanted it recorded.
Election security experts working for the plaintiffs in the lawsuit against the state have uncovered several troubling issues. Alex Halderman looked closely at the QR codes, where the votes are encoded for the scanner.
By analyzing the structure of the QR codes, I've been able to learn that there's nothing that stops an attacker from just duplicating one. And the duplicate would count the same as the original barcode.
And in late September, another concern came to light. During testing, election workers found half the names of the 21 candidates for Senate intermittently disappeared from screens during the review phase.
You never want to rush something which is mission critical, and this is mission critical, into production without proper time of testing. That's really one of the ways bad actors are finding the vulnerabilities to exploit, is looking for honest vulnerabilities and finding out if they can be weaponized, if they can be exploited.
And that's exactly, there's a few problems that are pointed out. One, I work in software. I've got $4 billion a year, at least pre-COVID, that goes through the software that I currently am the product owner of. We don't release anything without making sure we test the crap out of it because there's way too much money at stake. So in the case of elections, kind of similar, also money at stake. But on top of that, the centralization they talk about. It's very interesting how this can be centralized in one location. And on top of that, they've found that it's reasonably easy to take advantage of. All of this information came out prior to the election. I believe it was like a week before the election, so obviously not a whole lot of time, but it does start to paint the picture. Now, here's where we start to get into the really, really good stuff. I've got a very good video down here. We're going to get to it actually in a second. This first, right off the bat, there's a 2020 election took place under a Trump-declared national emergency that set an election day trap for the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, what? This is ridiculous. Well, first off, let's pull up the executive order. It's kind of interesting. And it was done September 12th, 2018, back before that election. Again, the 2018 election was the test run. I've been saying this a bunch. It was the test run. I don't think they wanted to reveal their hands so much on that one because it didn't matter as much, or at least nothing major was lost, right? The Senate wasn't lost. So I think from the standpoint of Trump and the administration and the forces of freedom, or forces of good for that matter, were kind of cool with letting it go because they knew the one that mattered was the 2020 election. They knew that was where all of the bread was going to be put in the basket, right? That's where all of those eggs would be put in the basket. Probably a better analogy. So again, executive order was signed. So let's just quickly go through this. Not a lot. There's a couple key places I want to point out that I think will give you great hope. So, by the authority vested in me as President of the Constitution and the law of the United States of America, including the international blah, 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 sections suchity such. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, find that the ability of persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence in United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcome or vote tabulations in the United States election, foreign powers have historically sought to exploit America's free will and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and magnified the scope and intensity of the threat of foreign interference as illustrated in the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with this threat. So one thing he calls out, not later than 45 days after the conclusion of the United States election, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the head of any other appropriate executive departments and agencies, shall conduct an assessment of any information indicating that a foreign government or any person acting as an agent of or on behalf of a foreign government has acted with the intent or purpose of interfering in that election. The assessment shall identify to the maximum extent ascertainable the nature of any foreign interference and any methods employed to execute it, the persons involved, and the foreign government or governments that authorized, directed, sponsored, or supported it. The Director of National Intelligence shall deliver this assessment and appropriate supporting information to the President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. So for the first 45 days, which, by the way, I was doing a little math, and that puts us out to December 18th would be when the 45 days have ended. And again, I've got factual information that suggests that things have already happened. We're talking about some of this in the past tense right now. But again, 45 days later, and then that's when the report is supposed to be done, right? The conclusion of the United States election, this report. Now, at that point, this part's interesting. Not later than 30 days following the date of this order, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, blah, 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 all these people. I'm going to show you who they are, by the way, because that's going to also go, oh. Okay, all these specific people shall develop a framework for the process that will be used to carry out their respective responsibilities pursuant to this order. The framework, which may be classified in whole or in part, shall focus on ensuring that agencies fulfill their responsibilities pursuant to this order in a manner that maintains a methodological consistency, protects law enforcement and other sensitive information and intelligence sources and methods, maintains an appropriate separation between intelligence functions and policy and legal judgments, ensures that efforts to protect electoral processes and institutions are insulated from political bias, and respects the principle of free speech and open debate. Now, the people we want to point out: Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo. Ring any bells? This guy is true to Trump all the way through, isn't he? Who else we got? Secretary of the Treasury, right? Secretary of Treasury, that's going to go to Mnuchin. This guy is in Trump's corner for sure. Next, we've got the Attorney General, Bill Barr. Obviously, everyone knows. William Barr, the Attorney General. I think we all feel like we can trust him for the most part. How about the Secretary of Homeland Security? Well, that happens to be Chad Wolf. He's the Secretary of Homeland Security. Oddly put in place, I believe, November 13th of 2019. So just a year ago plus, this is who was put into play. And the other individual, the Director of National Intelligence, which is John Ratcliffe, another individual that was swapped out not too terribly long ago, and is also someone that I believe is very much in support of Donald Trump. These are the close people to Trump who are going to be deciding what happens after the first 45 days, which I put at close to December 18th, which happens to be a Friday. So I'm assuming I tried to count my best. So that being said, we will be finding out what happens from this executive order. But what we do know, at least so we're hearing, and I'm going to let it play out here. And unfortunately, they did put this on Brighteon, which is Mike Adams' platform, but it's very it's not going to get locked down like other stuff has. But one other thing I want to point out is look who's reporting. Newsmax. You didn't hear this on Fox. You didn't hear this on NBC. You didn't hear this on any of those places, did you? But where you are hearing it is on my channel, on Brighteon, and on Newsmax. These are the places that are speaking the truth to the best of their ability. But this is Republican Senator, what's this guy's name? Rep. Gomer, however you say it. But this is who is speaking this information. Let's check it out.
Election, he needed to just give up. But Seidel, that's a place where all of this information was cycling through. Not supposed to, but it was. And actually, there was a German that, as I was told, there was a tweet in German from Germany that the U.S. Army had gone in and seized the Seidel server. They're going through bankruptcy right now. So there's all kinds of games being played. And I had suggested that the president might get information from Seidel, and the next day before, and I sent him specifics that he needed to get that would show a lot of fraud. And the next day before that information could be gotten, somebody ordered the U.S. Army, according to the tweet, to go in and seize the server. There are people involved inside the government that have been trying to take this president down: State Department, Intel community, and FBI, and all.
It's a very important thing to note. So it did come from an interesting source. But that being said, Seidel is who he's talking about, and that is the apparently now bankrupt company that owns this Dominion software. And when Sidney Powell recently said, "Release the Kraken," vows to expose the Silicon Valley and left-wing corporations that are using their power to help Democrats steal the election, when they said that people were knowingly passing misinformation in the executive order to help cover this up, he was speaking specifically about the media and quite possibly people like Adam Schiff and some other individuals who have actually gotten on their grandstand within the House and told dishonest statements, because he's apparently allowed to lie when he gets up on that podium, because he's not taken any sort of oath or vow or anything like that. He can say whatever he wants. So if he wants to misinform people, he can. Well, come to find out, the CIA obviously was playing a large part in this, from what I've been understanding through this article especially, that the CIA was left out of the loop on this particular raid. They found that the Seidel company is out in Spain. They're the owners. They found that there was a server that the CIA has been using for many, many years that was located in Germany. And this is where the information was apparently going through. And then you had Seidel in Spain, and the Canadian company, I guess, owns this software as well. So we've got all these foreign influences. Decisions were being made from apparently Spain and or Canada. Routing that data through Germany puts this as a foreign situation. And from what I understand, these servers have been taken into possession, which means they're going to be able to look at all sorts of information in there. This should be extremely telling, and considering how far before the 45 days we still are, I can only imagine what other information is going to come out. Now, someone did point out something funny. Sidney Powell is apparently from Durham, North Carolina. I believe that's where the Durham is. But it's also something we've been reminded in the intelligence drops recently as well, that Durham is still sitting in the back. There is all sorts of information that has been led out. They put in this executive order back in 2018. Durham started his investigations after, well, possibly before that. We've seen all sorts of evidence to suggest that some of this stuff's been happening for quite a while. So a lot of this was known. They knew this was going to happen in the election. They had a run through in 2018, and I think, in all honesty, they probably came to the conclusion that there was darn near no way to completely safeguard this election, especially once the COVID thing kicked in and all of the vote by mail stuff happened. It was something that became a lot more difficult to manage. And as we're seeing even in the recount in Georgia, they're still not letting the people from the other side, basically the Republicans, to come in and stand anywhere near where the counting's at. And to my understanding, I read an article where they were saying it will be one official to monitor 10 counters. 10 people will be counting, and only one individual can actually watch all 10 of those. Well, that's just ridiculous. There's no way you can meaningfully watch 9 people while you're watching one, and you really can't, unless someone's just doing something blatant and obvious, you can't really find anything. So doing the recount again is just a ridiculous concept. So a lot of stuff is coming out to play. Apparently, this German daily reported that the building was known to be the home of the vast network of the intelligence personnel, including CIA agents. This whole thing in Germany has been known about for a long time. Apparently, a whole bunch of people had offices within this building, and they were using this area for all sorts of things. So, again, going down, big tech giants, media giants, Democratic operatives, and half of the deep state. There is a lot of people that very well may be screwed on this one, and we'll see how it plays out. I honestly think for a lot of the politicians, they were given a choice probably by Trump early on in this whole election, or early in his term, and basically said, here's your choices for all you deep state people that are currently here. You either get on board and support freedom and support the direction that we're going, or you will pay the price. And I'm sure a lot of them said, you can't take us down, buddy. I mean, again, as the intelligence have done everything in their power to take them down, and Trump still hasn't given up. And in fact, it looks like Checkmate may very well be what is happening today. We're going to move forward, and again, this is top secret for the most part, so we're barely going to hear about it. I think possibly this little leak from this tweet is probably as close as we're going to get. So again, don't worry so much about the recounts. They are happening. This legal process is occurring. I think, frankly, for the most part, it's meant to delay until we get closer to the 18th when the executive order can be basically presented to the right people. And then at that point, these 2, 4, 6 people, I think it is, 5 people, will actually come together and come up with a plan on how we let the American people know, how we let the courts know, how, right, like this. You've got a whole lot of things that have to happen correctly, and you've got the right people in the room to do that. So I think a lot of these recounts, and it's why so many people are saying that Trump's just trying to stall, I think that's actually what it is. It's a stall tactic that's perfectly legal and perfectly acceptable, and there certainly has been a lot of irregularities, shenanigans, and glitches that are causing plenty of question and are worthy of being looked into. And again, as Sidney Powell's been saying, we've got the Kraken released. The information is out. We've got all sorts of lawyers that have kind of stopped doing what they were doing to try to help out with this. Sidney Powell being one of them. Trey Gowdy was another. Basically got fired from Fox News because he went to help the president's legal team. Things are happening. Things are in play. I think we've got a lot to look forward to in the near future. And again, as we've been told and teased over and over, nothing can stop this, right? Nothing can stop this. And so many of us were like, what and how? I think we finally are starting to see what and how. Remember to stay strong with one another. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It makes a big difference because I'm kind of in sort of YouTube purgatory right now. Hopefully I can get through all this. But I love you guys. Keep please supporting each and every one of us that are doing this kind of stuff. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.